audience right now, could you just go ahead and send us a text or even a message uh, letting us know that you can hear us and see us well? Anybody on the live chat?
Can you click on Trees and see if what he's saying?
We're just checking. Generally, when we have these live chats and certainly live sessions, we inherently run into some type of media difficulty. So hold on for just a second. Okay, getting somebody. Yes, yes, we just heard from Dwight. He can hear us and see us pretty good.
Okay. Hey,
Okay,
Dwight. Good to see you, brother.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, all right.
Hey, let me just say something. Dwight Green used to work for me. He was one of my top commanders, but he was a cop's cop. He was the type of commander that would get on the street,
Okay,
and he was an armchair commander like we see a lot of today. So it's an honor to have him out there.
fair enough, Mr.
All
Green.
right.
What?
Yeah.
All right. So since everybody can hear us, let me go ahead and start the proceedings here. Um, Broward County Sheriff's Office made and sold crack cocaine during the late 1980s and 1990s to make cases on citizens. It was known as reverse sting operation. This is how they did it. The Broward Sheriff's Office, in their infinite wisdom, used seized cocaine to create crack cocaine. Deputies would then pose as drug dealers and sell the crack cocaine. Be damned that people could get extremely addicted to it. Be damned that people could suffer long-term psychosis. Be damned that people would die of heart failure, stroke, or other long life effects. Be damned that it creates a cycle of violence and trauma in the community. In 1993, the Supreme Court case, State versus Williams, ruled this practice illegal, deemed it outrageous police conduct that violated due process. Naturally, the court ruled that this action was unacceptable and contrary to the fundamental principles of due process, regardless of the defendant's predisposition to commit the crime. This ruling aimed to check outrageous police conduct and ensure fairness in the judicial process. The operations disproportionately affected Black and brown neighborhoods and had a lasting impact on those arrested and convicted. So, the sheriff's office said at the time, and this is their defense, that by making crack, because they didn't have enough of it seized as a drug to use in the sting operations, that's why they did it. And they later tested the crack and cocaine for the contents of all types of illegal stuff. Broward County Sheriff's Attorney, State's Attorney, Mr. Pryor, said he would seek to vacate as many as 2,600 convictions of people who brought crack cocaine manufactured by the Broward County Sheriff's Office for sting operations between 1988 and 1990, and advised the current head of the Broward County Sheriff's Office of his intentions. And to his credit, current Broward Sheriff Gregory Tony has expressed his support for vacating these convictions, acknowledging the practice of these past wrongs. Gentlemen, I want you to take a look at the following.
Drug arrests dating back decades in Broward County are finally being cleared.
Those accused of buying crack made by law enforcement could soon have their records vacated. Local 10's Janine Stanwood is live to explain. Janine.
Decades ago, when Nick Navarro was sheriff, BSO actually cooked its own crack cocaine in this building right here to use for undercover drug busts. The courts found that that wasn't unconstitutional within itself, but they did find that people who were arrested for buying this stuff should have their cases cleared. But the state attorney now has found that that hasn't happened for possibly thousands of cases. Now he wants to help. It was the height of the crack cocaine epidemic for the Broward Sheriff's Office.
Open it up. More!
And one tactic that made headlines?
They decided, we're going to manufacture our own crack and have detention deputies pose as drug dealers out on the streets.
The drugs are being cooked at the courthouse on the 7th floor.
The state Supreme Court ruled in 1993 the practice was outrageous, and those arrested should have their records cleared.
He was found not guilty.
Now, more than 30 years later, State Attorney Harold Pryor announcing there could be thousands still on the hook, and the state has an obligation to fix it.
1989, 1990. Is when I actually started going out, selling crack cocaine.
Raymond Hicks says he was one of those detention deputies turned undercover dealers.
It didn't sit right with me because, working in law enforcement, you're saying how could a department manufacture their own drugs and give it to us to be sold in the street?
Funny enough, it didn't put a dent in the crack problem.
Attorney Ed Hogue represented many of those arrested.
For 30 years now, these people have been convicted felons. So anytime they go to apply for a job, anytime they would try to vote, they can't vote.
It's not clear how long it might take to clear arrest records, but current Sheriff Gregory Toney is on board, telling Local 10 in part, I find the actions of my predecessor to be a miscarriage of justice. Law enforcement officials must never become so desperate in our pursuit to apprehend criminals that we compromise our own integrity.
I think it's a great thing that he's doing, and I'm hoping and praying that it'll bring these people some closure.
The state attorney's office says there could be as many as 2,600 cases that need to be cleared. We wanted to know, how does that process happen? We did ask for request an interview with the state attorney. We're told at this point, no, they are still working on the details, and it could be a very long process. We're in Fort Lauderdale. I'm Janine Stanwood, Local 10 News.
It doesn't even stop there, guys. So I want you to imagine this. You're a decorated deputy sheriff in one of Florida's largest counties. You've got the uniform, you've got the badge, you got the trust of your community. Then one day, you're the one in handcuffs. No drugs found on you, no surveillance, just some names whispered by convicted felons and colleagues that should be convicted felons. And a justice system that suddenly forgets your presumption of innocence. The media calls you corrupt, the department calls you disgraced. But what if you're innocent? And this is what we have right here. What if you were set up because you saw too much and said too much? He was facing life. Life, for Christ's sakes, based on people with every reason to lie who wanted to pin this on him. This isn't just a story about a man as much as the system eating its own. It's about power, retaliation, and what happens when an officer breaks the blue wall. This is the story of Raymond Hicks, and he's with us live right now today on Hill of Justice. Today's guest is a man whose story shakes the very foundation of what we think when we know about law enforcement, loyalty, and justice in America. His story has reached national attention, featured on platforms like Vlad TV, Matthew Cox Inside True Crime, the Danny Jones podcast, and the Whistleblower Network. These are pretty impressive, and there's many more that we can't even mention at this point in time. This underscores the depth and the gravity of his experience, and that's just scratching the surface. Raymond Hicks is a former Broward County deputy sheriff, respected, decorated, and by every account, a rising figure in one of Florida's largest law enforcement agencies. Over his career, he received accommodations for his integrity, community service, engagement, and leadership. And he wasn't just doing his job. He was just doing the right thing. But in 1994, his life was turned upside down without a single shred of physical evidence, without any drugs or money ever being found on him. He was indicted on federal drug trafficking charges that could have put him away for life. But Raymond Hicks didn't fold. He fought back. And after a grueling federal trial, he was acquitted of all charges. Not guilty on every count. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Deliberation didn't even last an hour. Yet even his name, even though it was cleared, the system never gave him back his life or his career. Today, he speaks not just as a former officer, but as a man who knows firsthand what happens when the system you serve turns against you. Raymond Hicks, welcome to the Hill of Justice.
Good evening, my brothers. How you guys doing, man? First and foremost, I truly want to thank God for this opportunity, as well as Sheriff Hill, and also my man Jerome, who've actually worked in law enforcement. It's a tremendous blessing to come on here and speak in reference to everything that you just displayed to each and every individual that's watching tonight. You talk about a miscarriage of justice, and the trials and the triumphs and the tribulation that we've gone through as a family has been heart-wrenching.
It's all right, brother. It's all right. Let me ask you. No, go ahead.
It gives me an honor and a privilege to be here speaking with one of the most powerful individuals that ever worked in Atlanta, Sheriff Hill. I truly thank God for Chief Gorland, Miss Victoria, for putting me in contact with you brothers. This is a story that I've been trying to tell for the last 24 years. And what you just displayed and what you played for the audience is something that I've been praying and asking God for. Lord, bring out the truth in reference to what happened. If I was guilty of any crime that these people accuse me of, I meet my bed hard, I have to lie down in it. They took something from me that I love, not something that I like, something that I love. I took pride in everything that I did as a deputy sheriff, a Gold Cross recipient, Silver Cross recipient, 2-time Deputy of the Month. And lo and behold, because I choose not to get involved with the illegal virtue that was going on within my department, where they was cooking crack, giving it to us to be sold in the street, which was called the cradle. And predominantly they set up in black areas. And I'm saying to myself, this is entrapment. How could this take place? And of course, I kept a document, and that document on May 14th of 1990, it detailed that they gave me a letter of accommodation for the amount of arrests that we made that particular day. They took several of us out of detention. We weren't even certified to be out on the streets to work as a deputy sheriff. So the miscarriage of justice and everything else that took place, anything my department asked me to do, I did it. I did it without hesitation, reservation, because it was something that I chose to go into and something that I loved and I respect. And ever since I was 8 or 9 years of age. So it gives me an honor and a glory, just to be here on this podcast with you brothers, speaking about everything that me and my family have gone through for these last 24 and a half years.
I got some questions for you. And, first of all, I got a glimpse of what you've been through. I'm not going to say I've been through what you've been through, but, I know what it's like to have people prosecute you for something you didn't do. In my county, actually, it happened 2 times by the same DA's office. And that's why one thing I will say about this case that's interesting to me, that there's actually a DA trying to reverse that stuff, because we see so many now that will allow wrong to go on without correcting it, just out of being stubborn or whatever the reason that comes with it. So, it shows that not all DAs are bad. We know, but we got some horrible ones like we got here in Atlanta. But this is what I want to ask you. Whose bright idea was it back then to cook crack cocaine? Who was the person that thought he was a genius to come up with that? I'm curious about that.
Well, it actually started with Sheriff Nick Navarro.
Right.
Sheriff Nick Navarro was the one who actually created this cradle, which was called, it was called a cradle, but you get caught within 1,000 feet of a school was 3 years in the state penitentiary automatically. And he was the one who actually created this this drug task force. So it was a multi-drug task force unit that consists of other cities and everybody else, and of course they pulled individuals out who had street lingo, that can get out there and pose as undercover sellers. You can't take a cop and put him in certain particular areas and expect for that person to do the same thing as an individual who have actually grown up in the street, Sheriff Hill. So they chose individuals like myself who grew up in poverty, in the streets. I've been in the streets all my life, and of course I'm fully aware of the street lingo. Yo, my nigga, I got them parlays. 99 or 50, these are the things that the slang language that people use, and of course we call the drugs parlays. That's what the drug dealers call them, parlays, and we talking about a cocaine rock. So of course, it was actually started with Sheriff Nick Navarro, and it continued on with other individuals that actually was the top administrator for the Broward Sheriff Office. And it was operated out of District 5, which is unincorporated Broward County.
All right. So I got another question, because this story is so fascinating, but I want to get to the crux of it. So here's the next question I got for you. You get indicted by a grand jury. We've discussed these grand juries before, and that has a lot to do with the mission I'm on now. A DA can walk in and without you being there, without your attorney being there, and tell a grand jury whatever they want and get you indicted. So it's almost hard to believe anything that comes out of grand juries these days because of it. But so I understand how they could have gotten an indictment on something that's completely false, because that's what they do when they use indictments. But here's what I want people to hear from you. What's the backstory? Like, for instance, in my story, a lot of people, well, they probably know now because the book is out, but it was a plot with the DA and another elected official to get me out to get him in. And there was a judge that was friends with them that worked with it, where a judge was friends with these people as well. Who was behind your indictment and why? What's the backstory? Why is it that they wanted to put you before a grand jury and imprison you for something you didn't do?
Well, first of all, that's a great question, Sheriff Hill, is that, number one, I never even knew that I was indicted by a grand jury. This actually stemmed from my department. Internal Affairs has a fiduciary duty to call a man a female or male who goes out and commit a crime, or there's a complaint that's been lodged against that person. They have to give you a garage statement. They have to call you in and ask you, have you ever been associated, affiliated with some form of criminal activity? I saw too much, Sheriff Hill. When I was working Drug Task Force, OCD, and organized crime, and I'm watching these individuals plant drugs, take money, beat young Black offenders to the ground, I told them that it was morally wrong, totally unethical. We were actually going into different areas, and we were doing buy-bust. And what that consists of is that we took informants who've actually been arrested, and we would give that person X amount of dollars, which was marked. And actually cocaine rock, it was marked because on the Ziploc package, there was a serial number. So we would give these informants this money and drugs, and we would send them to a certain particular location, and they would come back and give us the intel in reference to who they made contact with. And of course, once we arrested those individuals, they would put them in a paddy wagon. And then, of course, we get out and pose as undercover sellers. I had 3 goals in my mouth, hat twisted backwards. You would think I was the biggest thug, but my job was to bring down the biggest drug dealers. But I realized the drug dealers was actually within my department. So one particular area here in Broward County, the subject was selling the cocaine rocks for $40, $50, and $60. The cocaine rock cost $10. And at the end of the night, we would tally up all the money and the drugs, and it goes in the manila folder. And that when it goes in that folder, they put red tape which says evidence, and the supervisor has to sign it, acknowledging, that we've confiscated all these things. But they never put the money in the package. They was actually keeping the money. So that's when I'm watching these dudes. I'm like, wait a minute, man, you guys are wrong, man. You guys are no different than the one that we just arrested. What are you doing? So they was planting drugs, they were beating young Black offenders to the ground and taking money from it. And when I spoke out against them, they told me to mind my own business. I said, what the freak you mean, mind my business? You guys are no different than the one that we just arrested, and you guys should be put in the paddy wagon and going downtown yourself. And next thing you know, everything intensified. So when you're working out there with these gentlemen and they taking money and drugs, and you're not a part of it, then at some point they're going to do everything they can to ostracize you. They're going to destroy you in some form or fashion. They're going to come up with something. And that's what these people did. There was no indictment. I didn't see no indictment. They never even showed me a warrant. 60 cops stormed my home at gunpoint. They had my kids at gunpoint. They was 12 and 7, and they had me at gunpoint. My wife had gone to Winn-Dixie, and of course, my oldest daughter called her and said, Mom, they hear, these police here at the house. I guess whatever she said to my wife, And next thing you know, my wife comes from around the corner. They done put me in handcuffs and went in there and ripped up my home, and telling me, Dave Robshaw said, well, Ray, do you have any guns? I said, yeah, I got guns. These guns belong to me. They don't belong to the sheriff's office. Well, we're going to suspend you pending the outcome of this investigation. I'm like, what investigation? Where's the warrant? Where's the search warrant?
So let me stop you there.
They never presented no search warrant to me, Sheriff.
So no. Trust me, I believe you because I know how these folks operate. But so let me clarify something that you said, because you said something pretty powerful. They didn't get a warrant; they got an indictment. And for our audience listening, who's not familiar with grand juries, America is the only country left that still uses grand juries. They've been abolished in every other country except Liberia, and they rarely use them. And again, a prosecutor can walk in a grand jury and tell them whatever they want. The person, like former Deputy Raymond Hicks, not even notified that he's going before the grand jury or there's a case. He can't be there. He can't have an attorney. He can't defend himself. And all of a sudden he's indicted. And that's how we get where we're at, where they say you can indict a ham sandwich, because you literally can. So this is a tool that prosecutors use if they want to put a charge on somebody, because had they went to actual judge, they would have to come up with actual probable cause, show evidence. With a grand jury, you really can pretty much tell them what they want. And when you see false convictions or false charges, they usually come about two ways. Number one, it's going to be perjury, or number two, the manufacturing of evidence that doesn't exist, where officers plant stuff on things or plant evidence on people, stuff like that. Perjury, of course, is when you get prosecutors lying to the grand jury, which you rarely ever held. I don't even know of a case where they've been held accountable. And then, of course, they solicit witnesses who lie, and then people get convicted or prosecuted based on that. So basically, in confirming what you just said, one day you wake up and you find out you're indicted, didn't even know they was putting a case before the grand jury. And then no doubt it was a result of these guys, when you called them out, knowing that you were a threat to them making money and doing what they were doing. Correct?
Absolutely. And, but Internal Affairs has a fiduciary duty that if a man or woman goes out and commit a crime, Sheriff, they have to call you in to give you a garage statement. They swear you in, and you have to sign that garage acknowledging the fact that you've been sworn in, and you bound by telling the truth, nothing but the truth. And the fact of the matter is that they never did that. They lied and said they gave me a garage, but when the investigators began to ask questions of them, okay, well, show me a copy of the garage. They couldn't present a garage. To this day, they can't present a garage because they never called me in there, sir. They told me that, listen, Ray, you can't work out on the streets anymore because I saw too much. And the fact that I said, okay, we're going to put you back in the jail. Okay, I started in the jail. I'll go back and work in the jail, and what? And of course, they put me back in the jail. I'm working the 6th floor. I come home, and next thing you know, 60-some cops from the Broward Sheriff's Office. So if there's an indictment, from my understanding, that you get arrested by the marshals. There was no marshals at my home. It was 60-some cops from the Broward Sheriff's Office. And,
right.
And see, this is where the problem come in at, Sheriff Hill, is because of the fact that if there's an indictment by the the DA's office, right? The federal grand jury, okay, you're not going to get arrested by the Broward Sheriff's Office unless they piggyback off of the marshals. But
so let's stop right there a second. Very good point. So, I write about this in my book when I said all politics is local, even if the feds are involved. So you got the feds, but the people who work in the federal government in that particular jurisdiction live there. Like you take my case, for instance. You got a judge on my case, which was the same judge on the Chrisley's case, and she lives in DeKalb, was a state court judge there before she got appointed. So these people, even though they work for the feds, they have relationships with local law enforcement. So when people say the feds are in, you got to understand, for those watching, I know former Deputy Hicks understand that, but all of these folks are connected because they work right here in that particular area or in your area. So there's friendships and there's stuff like that. It might be a federal court judge, but they live right there in the area. They may have been a judge in the county right there before they went to the federal court judge. And there's these relationships. So when folks can't get things done on a county level, they talk to their friends right there at the local federal courthouse, and then they're able to convince them, hey, I would like to see this guy indicted. And if they're the type of people to get in on stuff like that, they will. So I know exactly what you're talking about. You got a very good point. The fact, why did the marshals come? I can tell you why they didn't come. It's kind of like in my situation where you got the DA that has friendships there. You got friends with the federal court judge that just happened to be on my case, and the federal court judge just happened to be friends with my political opponents. But you got a very good point there. So now with that being said, now you're going to jail. Tell me what it's like. You're a cop and you're going to jail. Tell me how long you were there, and tell me what the experience was while you were there.
Well, so when they arrested me, they actually took me over to District 5, which is a substation for the Broward Sheriff Office. I'm still asking questions, why am I being arrested? Because nobody never told me at my home why I was being arrested. They never corroborated that information to me. Well, we can't discuss it. What you mean you can't discuss it? So I get down there and I'm asking questions as they booking me in. So then they later transferred me over to the city jail. So when I get to the city jail from the county, then I'm still asking questions like, why am I here? What did I do wrong? Because at this point, nobody have told me anything about no drugs or anything of that nature. So I'm there at the city jail, and they put me in solitary confinement for 24 hours. And the very next day, the marshal shows up. So I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, man. Why is the marshals here? And I asked them a question.
Why did they put you in solitary confinement? Did they tell you?
Your guess is as good as mine. I guess because I was a deputy sheriff.
Okay.
So they put me in solitary confinement for 24 hours. I wake up the next morning, the marshals come there. So I'm like, wait a minute, man, why are the marshals here? Oh, Ray, we're here to take you to court. Take me to court for what? What did I do? Oh, well, we can't discuss anything about your case, but we're here to take you to court. So they handcuffed me and shackled me. And as they handcuffed me and shackled me, they put the chains intertwining with the handcuffs and shackles right in front of me. So of course, they put me in an unmarked car and take me over to the federal courthouse. So when I arrived at the federal courthouse, I'm still asking questions. So the DA says, well, when Mr. Hicks is at work, he's in the top 10% of his department. But when he's not at work, he's into other curricular activity. So I'm looking at my mother, my wife, saying, what are these people talking about, man? What do you mean other curricular activity? So she proffered to the courts that I went to various states delivering 350 kilograms of cocaine that was equivalent to $750 million. And I lost it at this point. I'm like, what the freak is this? And then so the magistrate judge said, oh, Mr. Hicks, you're not a flight risk. You're not a flight risk because you don't have a passport, but you're a menace to society. I'm a menace to society. I'm the only one in my family decided to go into law enforcement. Mm-hmm. I'm the only one. And I'm asking these questions. How can I be a menace to society when I won the Gold Cross Award? I risked my life doing an armed carjacking. The Silver Cross Award, I broke both of my hands protecting the sergeant who they were trying to toss him over the rail. I was named 2-time Deputy of the Month. And the very next year, I'm faced with natural life imprisonment, that I'm a menace to society. Listen, it's a shame and it's a disgrace what's going on in the system, man. It's a shame and it's a disgrace because, as a little boy, ever since I was 8 or 9 years of age, there was constantly chaos in my home. Stabbing, cutting, my mother was shot. My dad went to prison. I watched this with my own eyes. And of course, when the cops pulled me aside, come here, little man, let me talk to you. They pulled me away from the records. My mom and dad just spit his plunging knives into each other's body. And here it is. I'm saying, okay, they pulled me away. They talked to me. I said, if I don't play professional football, I would go into law enforcement to make a difference. I was one of the highly decorated officers. There's nobody, no one that ever wore a uniform the way I wore a uniform. You can ask even inmates to this day would testify that I helped them change their lives. That's why I look up to you, Sheriff Hill, because number one, I've read about all the things that you've done. I've seen how you went into a restaurant and a young lady recognized you, and she said, "Oh, that's Sheriff Hill," and giving you the utmost respect, and admiration, but because of the fact of who you were. It's a shame and it's a disgrace that these people are allowed to do the things that they do to people who are making a change and a difference in society. If I want to be a criminal, my whole family's criminals. I come from the gutter. You ask anybody out for Sunrise and 22nd Avenue. I come from Franklin Park, 2304 Northwest 9th Street, Building 16, Apartment 6. Only the strong survive over there. And I'm saying to myself, here it is. I'm the one that you guys want to ostracize because of your wrongdoing. These people are out of control, man. They're out of control.
I do want to say this.
They're out of freaking control, man.
The level of drugs that this federal indictment, particularly what they said that he had.
350 kilograms.
That in a duffel bag. Let me tell you, for the people in law enforcement that knows the gravity of what a duffel bag looks like and trying to put all that drugs in there, impossible. We've tried. It's impossible. So on the face of it, it was already disgusting anyway, how that was all set up. And I figured that there was also some red flags because there couldn't have been just the fact that they were looking at you and they were like, okay, they froze you out immediately. I'm sure that they were still doing it. And it seemed like to me that, yeah, they were upcharging, the proceeds, and they were shuffling, they were taking some off the top and then putting some back into evidence control. And that's how they were making their money, hand over fist on that end of it. The second part of that is the fact that after they found out that you were not to be trusted by them because you weren't in the in crowd anymore. I'm sure, and maybe you could give me some details about this, that at that point in time, you started seeing those situations less and less and less because now they know that you're a problem.
Absolutely. And that's the problem. That's the problem. I didn't sign up for law enforcement to be out there taking money, taking drugs, and all this other nonsense, planting drugs on innocent people or subjects to get an arrest. That's not what I signed up for. I signed up to be an example for other individuals, to let them know that I come from the gutter, and because of the fact that I came from poverty, got my way out of it, worked my way out of that situation to become the person that I am today. I still love law enforcement, in spite of what these people did to me and my family. I still love. There are so many men and women that put on the uniform each and every day to make a difference, and I was one of them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, hands down. But one thing is for sure, as my mother told him, she said, "I'm gonna tell you right now, you better put on your seatbelt. You better put your seatbelt on because that one right there, he gonna take you every step of the way to the door." And may God be my witness. The almost 2 years of incarceration, faced with natural life imprisonment without possible parole. I mean, you got to be kidding me, man. For what?
So 2 years of your life, you're sitting in jail waiting to go to trial. 2 years away from your family on a lie. And tell me about that. You're sitting in there waiting to go to trial for 2 years based on a lie. What happened while you were in jail waiting during that time? What was your experience there?
So when the magistrate judge, hit the gavel and said, "Get this man out of here," they actually took me to the holding cell where there was 5 other individuals, dudes that I used to work out with. They had a big gym. We was all working out there. And I'm thinking that one of them said something to me, Sheriff. I told him, I said, "Which one of you niggas said something about me, man? Which one of you guys said something about me to put me in a situation like this? I'm getting ready to eat every last one of them, so help me Jesus." And they was like, "Big Hicks, man, you tripping, man. You tripping. We ain't getting nothing to you, man. We ain't got nothing to do with none of this stuff." And all of a sudden, they take me and put me in a paddy wagon, take me down to the federal prison in Miami. I get there, They treated me like I was the lowest scum on the face of this earth. It's a certain way that you script search your inmate. You know, I told them, I said, you guys are nothing, there's nothing professional about you guys, man. You guys are inhumane, man. The way that you call yourself treated me. The way you strip search an inmate, you have them take off all their clothes. You have them lift their tongue. If they got hair, you have them running fingers through their hair. You have them turn around, bend over at the waist. They have to lift the bottom of their feet, and they have to squat at the waist and cough to see if they're containing something inside their anal. And I'm saying to myself, the way that they treated me was just totally unprofessional. And then they took my clothes and put it in a box, and they said, we're gonna send your clothes back to your wife. I said, okay, no problem. And then they come and give me an orange jumper. So when they give me the orange jumper, they actually took me up to the hole. I stayed in the hole for 5 months. I stayed there for 5 months.
What's the one thing about your trial that the public never knew, but if they did, it could have changed everything? Is there something about the trial? I don't know, but was there something about it?
They had no evidence. None whatsoever. Not one piece of evidence, not one piece of drug, not one piece of money. But I'm sitting there locked up, faced with natural life imprisonment because of the fact that I chose not to get involved with these people that's doing wrong. These people literally tried to kill me, man. They actually, but they couldn't break me mentally in the hole, because once you stay in the hole for 5 months, you in there for 23 hours a day, 1 hour a day for recreation. And the majority of the people that you put in the hole, I swear to God on everything I love, you would not come out the same. You would not come out the same if you were in there as long as I was in there, because you start hallucinating. It seems like the walls are closing in on you. It's almost like you could put your arms out. You know, it's almost like that movie, Reuben Hurricane Carter, when Denzel was locked up in the hole and he began to talk to himself. You know, these are the type of things that you experience when you're in that type of situation, man. You know, only God can help you get through a situation like that. There ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it got to a point that the officer was jigging at me. Oh, you that effing cop. I hope you're gone for the rest of your life. I'm like, you guys are wrong, man. Your job is not to judge me. Your job is to remain as a professional. So how is it that you can say these things about me, but yet still you took an oath? You took an oath to uphold and respect your policy and procedure and the SOP, the standard operation procedure. What gives you a right to judge me because of the fact I'm in here? I'm innocent. Oh yeah, they all say they're innocent. I said, I don't know about the rest of them who tell you that they're innocent.
Stop right there. You said something very powerful. So basically, you said something that we hear about, but a lot of people I don't think truly understand until it happens to them. And some people may have it happen on a level like maybe just at a job. Maybe you have a coworker lie on you and cause you to get written up or fired. You know, there's a lot of people, I don't know if they've actually experienced what it's like to have a prosecutor lie to a grand jury and actually get you indicted, and to have people show up at a trial and lie on you to get a conviction. So that's a whole nother level. But you said something there. You said about you're supposed to be treated innocent until proven guilty. Let's go into this for a second, because you're one of the individuals that experienced what it's like to go to a trial after people have lied to a grand jury and then have people come and testify for something you didn't do. I guess what I'm trying to ask you is this. You were a deputy sheriff. You and I started, no doubt, around the same time. And I'm sure you're like any other young idealistic person like I was. Wow, I'm getting ready to join a great profession. And I'm getting ready to join people who are for, not teasing you, Jerome, but for truth and justice, the American way, like that hat he has on, right? And then you find out that there are prosecutors that will lie, there are cops that will lie. And what was it like knowing that people that you thought you could trust or you thought would at least uphold the law, but that they were willing to lie to get a conviction and willing to lie to get an indictment? Break that down to us for a second.
That's one of the reasons why, Sheriff Hill, that I wrote in my book that so many people are forced to plea bargain to avoid facing increasingly hard sentence because they cannot afford these high-powered lawyers. And the fact of the matter is that I learned that the DA, the court-appointed attorney, will get a bonus when you take a plea. And see, a lot of people didn't even know. It's just like you said earlier, you know, that how they can indict a ham sandwich. You know, it's the same thing that I wrote in my book. They can indict a cheese sandwich based on the information that's been presented to the DA's office and some of these FBI agents. And it's a shame, it's a disgrace that these people have these type of things in place. You know, so my court-appointed attorney was basically trying to force me to take time.
Right.
I mean, Mr. Marty Fagenbaum was the first one. You know, he come to me and said, hey, Ray, listen, man, you're faced with natural life without possible parole. These people's offering you 16 and a half months. You've been down for 11 and a half months. You'll go home in the next 3 months. I told him the devil is a liar. I'm going to trust God and know that God going to deliver me. I'm going to trial, man. And of course, he said to me, I said, well, where's the evidence? Well, that's something I got to go and check. I said, well, you need to go check it and get back with me. So when he found out, he came back to me, took me back to court and told the judge, he says, Your Honor, I'm getting off this case. She said, what's wrong? She said, my client and I are not seeing eye to eye, and I don't want nothing else to do with this case. He realized that these people was wrong in reference to the situation. So that's when he told me, he says, Ray, on the manuscript, write down everything that happened to you because this could possibly be a bestseller book, maybe possibly a movie at some point or another. So he got off the case. Then they give me another court-appointed attorney, Ruben Garcia. He comes in, Ray, I'm going to tell you something, man. I'm not going to be like this other court-appointed attorney. You know, these people are offering you time. You ever want to see your family again, you need to take these 16 and a half months. But they wanted me to take a 5K1, you know, which is downward departure and an immunity that testify against these other 6 people. I said, I'm not testifying against nobody. If they did wrong, you go get them, but I'm definitely not going there and admit to something that I didn't do. I said, just like I told the other lawyer, I'm gonna tell you the same thing, Mr. Garcia. I'm not taking nothing, man. I won't even take time served. I'm going to trial, man. And he gonna tell me, well, I can tell you right now, Ray, you know, you got a beautiful wife and kids. You know, now he wants to put my wife and kids in the picture. So what I did is I gave him some information that was going on within the sheriff department. And back in the days, you know, when we call these subjects in, we separate them and we play a game with them. And that's what I did with him. I gave him information, right, in order for him to go back, because I knew he was going to go back and say something that I never gave him authorization to do. And that's exactly what he did. So when I began to tell him about the corruption and everything else that was going on within the department, he went and discussed my situation with the DA. So he hurried up and pulled me out of the holding cell. And he says, Ray, listen, man, over the weekend, I had an opportunity to speak with the DA office. And she said, you're not there because of your department, but you're there because of your involvement. I said, what involvement? What involvement are you talking about?
Right.
And furthermore, see, he didn't know that I set him up. I set him up because I gave him some pertinent information. And when he went to discuss it with the DA office, I wrote a letter to the judge stating that I never gave him authorization to go back and discuss anything with the DA's office without my authorization, which is protected up on attorney-client privileges. So
let me ask you this. You've done a beautiful job of describing what I call a plea gun. So first of all, you get indicted. You don't even know you're getting indicted because these people go in before a grand jury and they tell them what they want. So now you're indicted. So then now you're facing all of these years based off an indictment, which a lot of times, unfortunately, we know now are based on lies, like with you. So now you're facing all this time. And then they're like, hey, just take this deal and you could go home. And so many people do because, you know, and there's 19 million convicted felons in this country. And, you know, it's easy how people throw around, he's a convicted felon, she's a convicted felon. But I don't think a lot of people realize how easy it is to become a convicted felon and how these prosecutors and sometimes even judges, like in my case, work to get people convicted on purpose with a strategy of doing it. So I think you did a good job of describing that, you know, you got this plea gun to your head and you got to be very, very strong mentally to say, hey, I'm going to fight it and I'm going to prove my innocence, knowing that you could well go to trial and still get convicted, even though you are innocent. But you went to trial and you got acquitted, just like I did in my first trial, until they decided to turn a different strategy in the second trial when they thought they couldn't get a conviction, which they almost didn't. So you're acquitted. What happens then? Is your life, does your life given back to you? Is everything okay? Did you go back to the job, which I think you already answered that, but tell us what happened. You're acquitted now. What happens then?
The jury deliberated and they came back with it was a 12-panel jury. There was 12 Caucasian, one black alternate. And the chief judge said, what are drugs? And they said, we have no drugs. He said, where are the money? We have no money. So why is this man here? So they lied and said I was giving confidential law enforcement information, FCIC, NCIC. So finally, my wife went through her thrift saving and she got an attorney by the name of Michael Bloom, who was a federal prosecutor who never lost a case in 15 years. And he told my wife and my mom, he said, Mr. Hicks, your husband and your son is not a drug dealer. I know a drug dealer when I see one. So he subpoenaed the communication operator, Captain Munez. She came in and she testified. I worked in this capacity for 25 years. Mr. Hicks has not ran FCIC, NCIC, because it's controlled through the Social Security number. Then they lied and said I was on audio tape. So when they played the tape for the chief judge and the jury, it was the same deputy who arrested me, Bernard Brown, at my home. So the jury deliberated. They came back with the not guilty verdict within 30 minutes.
So after that, then what happens? Tell us about your life after the acquittal.
My life was upside down. So I come home because, of course, you know, this was like when my wife and kids didn't even know that I was coming home. I put my hand over the peephole so they wouldn't know that it was me. But one of the deputies who actually stayed there in court, you know, his name was Gresham. And he stayed there because it was a quick verdict. And of course, he gave me a ride home. When they got me a ride home, everything intensified. Everything. I mean, we was way behind in the rent. My wife told me she had to go pawn her ring to the pawn shop that I spent over $15,000 for K Jewelers, a 2-carat diamond ring. She pawned it for $700. Cars repossessed. We were kicked. 24 hours, I was kicked out of my home. The Broward Sheriff's Office told me that they was going to give me my job back within 2 weeks. They didn't give me my job back. They continue with the harassment, Sheriff Jerome. They continue with the harassment.
Let me ask you a question. I saw one of the headlines that said that you sued. What was the outcome of that lawsuit?
It never went anywhere. It never went anywhere. I filed for malicious prosecution, false arrest, imprisonment, a violation of my constitutional civil rights, supervision, retention, destruction of evidence. It went nowhere. You know why? Because the judge who was directly involved in my criminal case, he wound up with my civil case. All of that's in my book. If you look in the back of the book, you're going to see. And then come to find out, there was a lawyer who said, Ray, if I'm not mistaken, this judge, he was directly involved in your criminal case. How could he be presiding over your civil case? So let
me stop you right there. So for people who find this hard to believe, trust me, he's telling the truth. I got a situation like that right now. The judge that's involved in my criminal case, who's friends with my political opponent on Facebook, who witnesses that she's friends with the DA, who we know coerced a guilty verdict after jury was out for four days, and also a judge that denied me equal protection, which means that equal protection means that if someone's never been prosecuted for that before, you shouldn't be prosecuted. And she didn't allow me to present the Gwinnett County stuff to the jury. So I know you're telling the truth because this same judge is on one of the civil cases with me. So that's a twerk in the federal system that is unbelievable. How can the same judge that's on your criminal case be on your civil case? And if that judge wasn't all kosher on your criminal case, what makes you think that they're going to be fair on a civil case? So you know, a lot of what you're saying, I want to weigh in on, because a lot of people sometimes when it's hard to believe, like, no, that can't be. Now, a federal court judge wouldn't do that. Yes, they would. And that's what the situation why I weighed in a lot on the Chrisley's case, because we had the same federal court judge, and there were a lot of people like, no, we don't believe that. I believe it because I know, because I was there, and we can show what she did to me. So what you're saying is very, very powerful, and I know you're telling the truth. And I just want to come in and make sure that people understand what you're saying. The same judge as on your criminal trials, on your civil trial, and that's something that just common sense shouldn't happen.
Let me add to that too, because, and this goes to you, Ray. So if Ray, can you imagine had you gone to prison, they would have proudly taken credit that they locked up a dirty cop. But
Yes.
since it didn't happen and you beat the charges, crickets, no good, silencio, nunca, nada. You don't hear nothing, nothing from them. And not even so much as an exoneration, a big piece in the press. As much as they wrote all this negative stuff about you, you get hardly any press.
Exactly. We have a media that won't recant their stories when they're wrong. We have a judicial system that won't apologize when they're wrong. They'll go to cover it up to save themselves the embarrassment of lawsuits or whatever. You're absolutely right about that, Jerome. And then I guess that brings us to what I want to ask you about next. You're an innocent man. You're proven innocent, but you have this financial devastation in your family, and no one's compensating you for that. And how has that affected you even to this day? Is it still in effect?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I work paycheck to paycheck. I work 12-hour shift. My wife been with the Postal Service for 38 years now. 38 years. Most people retire with 35. I guess she's going to go to 40 years. You know, it's a shame. It's a disgrace. I should be bringing home no more than $5,000 to $10,000 a month for the rest of my life. But these people didn't stop, Sheriff here and Jerome. They continue with the harassment. You know, after the first arrest, they stormed my home a second time on January 6th of 2004. Said I was shooting at someone in my backyard. At the time of the last shooting, my wife and I, we in court. So here come this black dude, put your effort. I said, you put your freaking hands on me, man. One of us gonna leave here today. You can believe that. So my neighbor, Lisa, who worked for the sheriff office, she came to the house. Hicks, don't do this, man. I'm like, man, this dude, I don't know what he tripping over. And then he gonna tell me I said, I eat mates, man. And Dave told him, he said, man, you know what that, the white guy told him, you know what that is? Man, that was one of our best deputies right there, man. I'm there handcuffed in my backyard for 6 hours. And then all of a sudden, my wife presented the documents to him and showed a lieutenant or a captain show up in the yard. He was Caucasian. I told my wife, go show him the documents showing that we was in court. My wife presented the documents to him, and within seconds, they dissipated. I'm not even exaggerating. Over 60 cops, just for one of me, 60. I mean, they had my house roped off. The neighbors and everybody was looking on. I'm like, these people are tripping, man. So finally, when they left, about a couple weeks later, they sent me a charge in the mail saying that I discharged a firearm. So I take that case to trial in Deerfield before it's Honorable Stephen DeLuca. And Judge DeLuca said, well, where the victim? There is no victim. Did you do a ballistic test? No, there is no ballistic. Where the bullet casing? We have none. He said, I tell you what, I got documents showing that him and his wife was in Judge Holmes' courtroom at the time of the last shooting. We going to trial within the next 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, I'm tried by the courts. I'm acquitted by the judge.
Right.
Because these people, and one thing though, we got to say, you were very blessed to have good judges. I wish I had a judge that would ask questions like that. I wish I would have had a judge that would say, "Where's the proof that this happened? Where's the proof that someone's injured? Where's the proof that somebody urinated on themselves?" So I know, so you had that case. I had a judge that was doing the exact opposite. And that was good on your behalf, but you brought something else up that is powerful. And I don't know if you realize what you said. You've expressed your anger on this platform, and you've expressed your anger to them when they had you in the handcuff, but you're still a man of great control. Let me tell you why. Okay. Even though you expressed yourself verbally, even though you said I eat maize, even though you said things to them which you probably should have said worse to them because they're a bunch of liars. You still didn't cross that line. You're a big guy. I know you can handle yourself. But yet you didn't go and choke nobody out. You didn't knock anybody out. I get the strange feeling you're probably an expert with the firearms. You didn't go become an active shooter or whatever. And of course, I would never condone these things, but what happened to you, it would be totally understandable if you felt that way and went that way. We're not condoning that, but you know what I'm saying. What was it that gave you the self-control not to snap and try to physically hurt these people that ruined your life? I think that's the message people need to hear before we leave.
I'm glad you asked that question. It's my relationship with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I watched my mom get beat to a pulp. My dad, when you're looking at me, you're looking at my father. That man was 6'1", 260 pounds. I'm 6'1", 287. He beat my mom. My mom 4'11", 120, 130 pounds, soaking wet. But I always saw her cry out to God. I always saw her cry out to God. And when I saw my mother cry out to God, that's my way of saying, you know what? God still rings each and every day. And to answer your question, Sheriff Hill, it's my relationship with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It's my wife, my kids, my family, my mother, you know, because one thing is for sure. As a young kid, I'd rather for you to kill me than to put me through what you put me through and my family. Because as a young kid growing up in the hood, the only thing I wanted was an opportunity to have a decent job, to inspire other people, to let them know that I came from where you came from. People have changed their lives because of the fact that they saw me. I'm talking about real killers. And, you know, to this day, again, it's my relationship with God, because I prayed and I asked God, Lord, you see this situation. You see what I'm going through. But God said, touch not my anointed, do my prophet no harm. And the fact of the matter is that, again, I look up and I thank God each and every single day for everything that he has done and what he's doing. It's my relationship with God. I had to build an intimate relationship with God. And when I began to cry out to God, all of a sudden, 24 years, the truth come out that you brothers are able to show to the people that may be listening out there that 24 years, the Broward Sheriff Office selling crack cocaine and giving it to us to be sold in the street. All these things. I don't care if it's me, my wife, my mother, my kids. When you're doing wrong, at some point, you're going to have to face the music. And that's why it's my relationship, to answer your question, Sheriff Hill, it's my relationship with God. It's brothers like you, you know, that have inspired so many different people, that I've heard inmates speak so positive about who you are and the difference that you made in so many people's lives there in Clayton County. It's your brother, you know, who went through a situation, but yet still he was able to go through that situation. And I'm assuming it's because of the fact that your father set a foundation, right? That foundation is not perishable. It's not made of sand. That's a concrete foundation. And that's what these people don't realize. What they did is they motivated me. They inspired me in so many different ways. That same kid who was held at gunpoint, she just graduated with her doctorate degree with honors. All of my kids are doing well. My wife doing good. I'm doing good. My mother doing good. So I look up and say, Lord, I thank you, because all the material things that we lost. And I truly thank God for Brother Gordon. You know, if it wasn't for Garrett, you know, I wouldn't have even known you brothers. But he saw my YouTube video, and he broke down someone that looked up to you as his mentor. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about moving to Atlanta, Georgia, because my sergeant live out there in Alpharetta. And all of a sudden, I get in contact with Victoria, and she says to me, "Oh, why would you want to come to Georgia?" I said, "Because I'm looking for a home, not a house, a home." And I began to tell her my story. And lo and behold, there I was, you know, speaking to her about my situation. And she actually corroborated that information to her husband. And her husband told Chief Garrett. And next thing you know, Chief Garrett said, "I want to see him."
we'd love to have you here in Georgia. Matter of fact, I think you would be a asset. Because that brings my last and final question. I'll tell you why I think you would be an asset here in Georgia. Based on what you've seen in the system, how grand juries work, how plea deals work, how a person can be put up on trial. You know, people think lawfare is just something that happened to politicians or celebrities. And when this happened to you, you weren't a politician. You were a deputy sheriff. You was just a deputy sheriff. You wasn't a celebrity. And it happened to you. And I think I don't even have to ask you. We know if it can happen to you, it's probably happened. How many other people it happened to? Not just deputy sheriffs, but everyday people that someone in the legal system decides to use their power with a grand jury and a plea deal to turn their life upside down. If you could fix one thing in the legal system, if there was something that you could talk to your let's play it out, your congressman, that he could fix to stop things like this from happening to other people, like what happened to you, what would that be in the legal system that you would fix, sir?
Well, first of all, I would come up with ban in the box. And ban in the box means that when you go and apply for these jobs, I applied for 15 jobs in various places. And all my estimates are turned down because of the fact of when you click on that application that you was arrested, you have to explain. That application goes into the trash. So you never get an opportunity to even speak about the fact that what really transpired. You could be innocent of what you accused of, but yet still, because of the fact that you said you was arrested, it goes in the trash. That's one thing I would do. Second of all, I would actually speak about how I think that some people need to be an advocate for men and women that's in a uniform. They should make no less than $100,000 a year. Because a lot of these officers that's out on the streets put their lives on the line each and every day, these people are actually living paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford to take care of their family. So when they come in contact with these drug dealers and everybody else, you know, who can actually change the dynamics of their home, you know, this is what needs to be done. Because to be honest with you, this stuff needs to stop. I have gone to every politician that you can think of. I've gone to the DOJ, Department of Justice. I've gone to FDLE. I've gone to the FBI. I've gone to the Inspector General's office. I've gone to the state representative. I've gone to the congressman's office. I've gone to you name it, I've gone there. And my wife, even with Mr. Harold Pryor, my wife and I went there. I brought documents and everything else to show them that everything I'm mentioning to you all is right here. I got copies.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No. What you're saying, you might, Jerome, I think he might have wrote more on my platform to put on this webpage coming out. Let me tell you, my former commander said something interesting. He said, when you move to the 5th Congressional District. Jerome, what you think? I think this should be one of my legislative aides. They help fight lawfare. What you think?
Let me tell you something. If you did something like that, that's going to be a slam dunk. It's going to put so much more material on what's going on. I will tell you that this gentleman, because in the eyes of many, okay, and I want y'all to always understand what I'm about to say. An innocent man walking is more dangerous than a guilty one locked away. That means that people don't want to go ahead and admit that they're wrong. You were wrong, Mr. Hicks. This is, let me say that again, because it's worth mentioning. An innocent man walking free is more dangerous than a guilty one locked away. That's what they wanted from you. And you were able to go ahead with enough intestinal fortitude to survive that. My hat goes off to you. My hat goes off to your wife and your kids. What a testimony on their part to go ahead and be survivors of this. We know in law enforcement, we got to have strong shoulders and we're going to deal with stuff. But we signed up for that. Have no illusions about that. That's what we signed up for. But we don't think about the cursory damage that we do to our families. And it's self-evident that you have a tremendous wife and kids. and I salute them, and certainly I can't wait to get to meet them. We live around the same neighborhood, so I can't wait to see them.
You know what? In conclusion, I just want to say this: you're a hell of a man, and you're an inspiration. And that
Thank you.
quote that you just gave, Jerome, is profound. Come on down here to the 5th District. Let's let 2 innocent, dangerous men give all of these corrupt prosecutors and folks who misuse the criminal justice system hell in Congress. Come on down.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, sir.
It's an honor to have you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You're something else.
Yes.
We're gonna still make beautiful music. So this isn't the end of our interactions. I also want to go ahead and just some of the great interviews that you gave with Vlad TV, with Cavario and Matthew Cox and Danny Jones, I believe is, and also the FBI whistleblower. I think her name was Jane Turner. Gave some great interviews, and shout out to each one of those podcasts and those YouTubers. That was amazing. So,
and actually, Jerome, now don't get me wrong, we've had some great people on the show, but this is our first celebrity. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, that's our first celebrity we've had on the show.
Yeah.
So.
Ray, you even beat me. Keith is third. Don't worry about that. So,
hey,
but
God bless you. It's an honor. Your strength, your testimony, and you just giving me even more inspiration to not just win, but to get something done for all of the people who've been done wrong. And not just wrongfully charged like you and I, but there are people who've been rightfully charged but still mistreated based on the system. And look at how many
that's
people
another thing. And that's another thing, Sheriff Hill. I heard you speak on is, the system needs some form of rehabilitation for these individuals who actually go through the system and they're forced to come back out here and try and take care of their family, not even getting a decent job in order for them to do so. And that's another thing. That's another glitch in the system that needs to be taken care of, because as you mentioned before, if a person can work as a awarded as an inmate and you get paid $1 an hour, right, to get in there and do the things that these people want you to do, why is it that these same individuals, you can't teach them a trade or something, right? So when they come out of that situation that they've actually created for themselves, where they can bounce back, because when you take an individual who's gone out and committed a crime and you put them back in the same environment where they came from, it's gonna intensify, because these people are not gonna get out there and work a 9 to 5, making $9, $10 an hour job, and it's a shame, it's a disgrace that the system don't have some form of a rehabilitation program in place to help these individuals. I know it for myself. I mean, I work security now, and Brother Jerome asked me how come I never went back to law enforcement. I can't tell you how many departments that I applied for, and they refused to hire me. And the thing about it is that I'm saying, okay, but I'm innocent. I have not done anything wrong. I wore the uniform proudly. My sergeant, who lives in Alpharetta, Georgia, he went on the podcast, Mick Unplugged, and told him Ray Hicks was one of the best. So that's why I say to you, Sheriff Hill, I tell you, man, you're a man of many hats, man. And I hope and pray that you continue to do the work that you're doing, man, to inspire other people, because I've learned that God gives his biggest battle to his strongest warriors. It's same as your younger brother, Jerome. See, that's what gave him the motivation to get through situations that he experienced also in law enforcement, right? Because he watched you. So at the end of the day, you have to continue to be that leader, that God have chosen you to be, because the enemy going to do everything within his power to distract you and not lead other individuals like myself and your brother and others. Why? Because they become intimidated. They become infuriated, and that's the thing, because like I said, I went back and I studied a lot of information about what happened to both of you brothers, and it's a shame, it's a disgrace, it's a miscarriage of justice. And I just hope and pray that you continue to be the person that you are, continue to motivate and inspire individuals, because you've done it from the community aspect, you've done it from law enforcement, you've done it in your family. It's something that's embedded in you. And I call the ace of spade the ace of spade, you know, and I just say to you, man, that I just hope and pray that God continue to elevate you to that next level. And I hope both of you brothers remember, as a brother that love you, respect you, eagles don't run away from storms. Eagles don't run away from storms. Eagle goes into the storm. And the reason why the eagle goes into the storm, because it has the wingspan to be able to soar. So the wingspan take the eagle higher than the storm. So we pray and ask God each and every day to take us higher than where we are right now, so that we can continue to inspire other people. And that's what I'm about.
Hey, with that, the doors of the church is open.
Right. And here's his book. I'm still standing. I also want to put up, as you can see here in the description, and what I just went about posting was his book here on Amazon. I'm Still Standing. You know, it would be just well worth it. And if you kindly want to go ahead and give to his GoFundMe, I have those links in the description. You know, so what I'm going to do at this point in time, Ray, it's just been a pleasure. I'm just going to go ahead and land the plane before we run out of runway space. So with that being said, guys, y'all did a great job. That's going to do it for this episode of Hill of Justice. A big thank you to Raymond Hicks for sharing his powerful story with us. This story matters.
Thank you, too.
His
Salute
voice
you, sir.
matters. Thank
Yes, sir.
you for watching. He is unbelievable. If you're moved, it sparked questions, or you know, you want to go ahead and leave a comment. And what did you think of this whole situation? Drop a comment, like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Same truth, always the same fight. We'll get into it next time. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, sir. All right, sir.
All right, let's stay on.